What's going on? I hope you guys are having a good day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to drboystv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. Now, a lot of you are already here, and I can tell that you're excited to hear from our special guest today. This is a sister who literally, in my view, set the world on fire with some testimony that you all, if you haven't seen it, you got to see it. And her name is Dr. Christina Parks. Dr. Christina Parks. She's going to tell you more about herself and fill in the voids, but I do recall Dr. Parks saying that she has a doctorate, a PhD in cell and molecular biology from the University of Michigan. Is that correct?
That's pretty correct.
Okay, and she is not just a person that knows a lot of things about a lot of things, but she also cares about her community, and that's something that I know that all of us appreciate and respect. And so I hope you all will join me in welcoming Dr. Parks to the platform. How are you doing today, Dr. Parks?
Excellent. Thank you.
Good. All right. So let's get started. First of all, I want to ask everybody in the chat, give me a yes or no. Give me a yes or no if you saw Dr. Parks' testimony. If I'm not mistaken, it was the Michigan, whatever it's House of Legislature.
Yeah, House bill. It's to stop. It's actually to say that businesses cannot discriminate based on vaccination status. Okay. And it wasn't just about the COVID vaccine. That particular representative, Sue Aller, had actually brought it forth in a couple of different years, and it never even made it to committee, I don't believe, because like the flu vaccine and that whole, like, you have to wear a mask if you don't get the flu vaccine. I mean, it just was silly, punitive, with no science basis. And so, and then the DTaP vaccine was one that also medical workers and others were kind of coerced to get. And so this is a bigger issue, although I think with this particular vaccine, it's hitting home much harder.
So, Dr. Parks, I guess let's start from the beginning. What my wife and I noticed, and my wife, in case people don't know, she's a scholar like me. We're all a bunch of nerds up here, and her field is social work. She's a full professor of social work. I'm a PhD in finance, and I went to Ohio State, and so I can forgive Christina for graduating from Michigan, and even though that's a cool school too, a great school, and we were intrigued by your testimony because I said, wow, here's a person that's really hard to refute. You know, it's you can't just sort of label and dismiss her, right? We have these labels. Oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. Oh, you must be a Trump supporter, or whatever people want to say. You came in with a lot of backing, a lot of science. So let's start there. What is it that qualifies you to talk about these issues that everybody's sort of discussing, you know, in an armchair quarterback kind of way?
Right. Well, the science of the COVID vaccines is extremely complex. And as a molecular biologist, that's the kind of thing I studied. In fact, when I was at University of Michigan, Jeffrey Chamberlain was there. He worked on the dystrophin gene, and he since went on to go on to do a lot of gene therapy. So I remember him bringing in different conferences, looking at gene therapy with the CFTR gene. So these exact same platforms, when I saw that, I was like, that's what we were doing. You know, the adenovirus vector and the liposomal particles. They started with the adenovirus vector. And so I was familiar with all of that, but not as a vaccination platform. And so I understand the molecular biology, what they're trying to do, what it can do, what it can't do, what some of the risks have been historically. And also, so I also have another one, and that is that as a mom, I actually got out of science and decided to teach because I really believe what we teach our young people is just so central. And then I homeschooled my son, and that gave me the time to sort of back up and take a more global perspective. Sometimes when you're in science, you can't see the forest for the trees. You're just really focusing on one little problem. And I had been concerned even in graduate school about vaccines when they added the chicken pox. I was like, I didn't feel that the cost of chicken pox, it wasn't deadly, was enough to warrant monkeying around with your immune system, because my degree is actually in cytokine signaling, and that's how your immune system signals. And so we kind of knew that we didn't know a lot, quite frankly, and that we weren't really altogether sure what unintended consequences might come from these vaccines. And so, as I said in my testimony, PhDs are some of the most vaccine hesitant people because they know that these issues aren't complex. It's not a magic bullet. In our culture, unfortunately, we've started to worship science. and hope and pretend that it's a magic bullet, and it's not. There are almost always unintended consequences of things. And so and then I saw the kids getting vaccinated more and more and more. Then they moved it to under 2 years. And I said, wait, I was taught that the immune system's not developed enough to even elicit a proper immune response. Why are we doing that? What I didn't know until much later was that in 1986, Congress voted to indemnify the vaccine manufacturers. So after 1986, they were not liable for any vaccine that's on the childhood schedule. Perfect business model. Mandate it for school, no liability. And so as soon as you get it on the schedule, you're good to go. And so you can imagine the pressure on our regulatory agencies to approve these because of all the money behind it and all the money that was getting made. The money that was made off of these catapulted the pharmaceutical industries into a powerhouse of lobbying and just money that they could, you'll notice if you turn on the news, a lot of it's pharmaceutical advertisements. And so are they there to sell you the pharmaceuticals, or are they there to control the content and make sure no bad press is released about the products? I don't know the answer, but I know I'm uncomfortable with that model. So I didn't know all of that, but I was seeing things that didn't make sense from a scientific perspective more and more and more. And several years ago, I took a deep dive into the vaccines with actually PubMed is online. That's where all your scientific papers are kind of stored. It's a library that you can access. We used to have to pay for that in the lab, so I didn't realize I could have access to it. And so I was able to take a deep dive into the primary literature and really see, each vaccine, what the positives and negatives. And what I found was deeply, deeply disturbing.
Really interesting. Okay, everybody who just came in, I'm talking to Dr. Christina Parks, and you saw her testimony this week, which you can actually check out if you go to my Instagram, which is The Real Boyce Watkins. You can actually see where I posted her testimony, and I know over 100,000 of you just on my platform alone watched the testimony, but millions of people saw it worldwide. And so hit the like button, share, subscribe button if you haven't done it yet. And I want everybody to know, and Dr. Parks, I'll mention this to you. This is the first time in a while that I've even had an interview where the word vaccines even allowed to be used. We posted your testimony on one of our YouTube channels, and YouTube took it down, and they said this is medical misinformation. And I wrote back and I said, well, she has a doctorate from the University of Michigan, and I said cell molecular biology, but you can please correct me. And I said she was testifying before the Michigan House of Representatives, or whatever it was called, and I don't understand why this would be defined as medical misinformation, And they put the video back up, right? So it's interesting. Yeah, right. We got lucky, right? But it was one of those things where I knew when I put it up, I said, this doesn't fit the existing narrative. And I would tell you the truth. My goal in all this, and I'd love to get your help on this, my goal is to be as apolitical as possible. Like I don't want it to be a Democrat Republican thing. I just want to know what the right move is. And so I have friends on both sides, and I don't get mad at them because I believe it's a personal choice. But it seemed to me that when you did your testimony, I saw a lot of people cheering, like, yeah, wow. Then I saw a lot of people saying, oh no, this is crazy. What's going on here? How has that been for you? How has that felt for you this past week or so with your video kind of being all over the earth?
Honestly, I've almost gotten mostly 100% positive feedback. Just a couple of people asking questions, which I'm always happy to answer. That's the thing. I'm not going to shut you down and say, if you're legitimately curious, now if you start attacking me or things like that, then I don't have time for it. But I have had in the past many naysayers, and I think the core belief that we want to trust our government, right? We want to trust that the CDC, that our medical professionals, even our doctors, really have our best interest in mind. And I think many of those people do, but they've been misinformed as well. And they haven't had the time or the energy or the inclination to take a deep dive as I have. Or, most people, doctors are not really familiar with the science at that level, at that cellular, molecular. And really, I wasn't. For instance, there's a virus called SV40, simian virus 40. And in graduate school, we studied this as sort of a prototypical virus that contributes or could cause, we usually say contributes, not cause, but cancer. And so we studied this in a fair amount of depth, but I was never ever told that it was actually isolated from the polio vaccine. And that is, yeah. So we
Okay.
were told that vaccines, sorry, I'm not supposed to say that word, right? We were told that we were saved from polio by this new scientific breakthrough, but we weren't told that there were actually a lot of unintended consequences of that campaign. And that it actually, in many ways, looked very similar to some of the things that are going on here. For instance, before the new jab came out, basically everyone, if you had paralysis for 24 hours of any limb, you were considered to have polio. After it came out, you had to have paralysis for 60 days or more to be diagnosed with polio. So do you think that the rates went down? There is new evidence that there's a possibility that different heavy metal and arsenic containing pesticides really played a role as a predisposing factor, because there were also other viruses that caused paralysis, echovirus and Coxsackie virus, and there was never any jab for those. And so those, like, what's going on with that? And so the science is more complex, the history is more complex, and there's been a cover up. And now there's 6 to 10 different types of cancer where they routinely sequence this SV40 virus from. And so a special mesothelioma is one, and you can go right into PubMed and find those. They're now trying to walk it back, but for a while it wasn't even in contention. And they go to Europe where so here's where it gets really messy. I was like, well, wait a minute, how did this monkey virus get into our medical treatment, right? And the answer is that all viruses are grown on cells. And for a long time, they were grown on animal cells. And they were grown on, a lot of them, an animal cell called a monkey kidney cell. And those do not have antiviral defenses. So they're like a Disneyland of viruses. And so when you grow a virus, for the inoculation on that, and you purify it, viruses are very small. You get some that ride along with it. And then when you give those to people, that virus now is transferred to the humans. That's one of the reasons, actually, I think this new platform, the mRNA, is actually not grown on cells. So that's one of the reasons I think they're trying to move to a cell-free platform. But my question as a scientist has always been, are you just, trading one set of problems for another? Let's slow down, right? And they've been working on these mRNA vaccines for quite some time, but none of them had been brought to market, and this one certainly came to market very quickly. And even if that platform were acceptable to me, this viral spike protein is very, very problematic, and you're basically telling all your cells to make it. So anyway, but we got off of the whole polio issue, that most people have never heard that story.
Well, Dr. Parks, one of the things that that stood out to me in your testimony was that you actually, I remember I said to my wife, her name's Alicia, and I said, this is probably the best testimony I've seen on all this, because I didn't feel like it was politicized. It wasn't like, oh, don't do it or you got to do it. It was like, here's some science. And one thing you said that really got me was you actually seem to make the argument that if I'm vaccinated against one strain, that if another variant comes out of the virus, that I'm going to be more vulnerable to that new variant. That blew my mind, because that's almost completely different from what the media has been saying. They sort of have placed this idea out, it seems, that the people going to the hospital are the ones who didn't get the jab, and that the people with the jab, yeah, they caught it, and and by the way, they are passing it, but they're okay. They're going to be fine. Can you kind of lay out your truth on that based on what you know?
I don't listen to the media very often, because when I do, it's really, really disturbing. So I'm just like, I can't listen to that, because some of that is just a lie. And so I understand how people who aren't versed in the science can promote that. But in fact, Rochelle Walensky was just on saying that the Delta variant that basically the vaccine had no ability to prevent people from transmission with the Delta variant. She said that. Fauci said that. I have recordings of them saying that. But apparently the mainstream media isn't echoing that message. I can send you those videotapes because they said that. Then there was, I gave the example of Barnstable, Massachusetts, where 74% of the people who became ill had gotten the inoculation and 4 out of 5 that were hospitalized. So that's not what the data are telling us, and it's not what the science is telling us. Now, there's always some variation in science where one study might show one thing and another might show something else because their methods are slightly different, or I mean, there are many variables that could make that happen, but that's not what the data are showing us at all. And in fact, this whole phenomena was a concern of many scientists, including myself. We were hoping it wouldn't happen. But it looks like to some degree it is happening. Until we have enough data in retrospect, we won't know what the whole story is because it's very, very complex. But we've seen this with the flu vaccine, which people have not been told. That if you get it every year, you are more likely to get either the flu or any other non-flu respiratory infection. It mistrains your immune system in complex and different ways that we don't totally understand, but we do understand some of it. So I can oversimplify it, but in reality, our immune system is so complex, and I believe it was designed by our creator. And so it's a huge act of hubris to think that we can monkey with it and make it do what we want it to do all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's not to say that we shouldn't sometimes take life-saving medical treatments. Many people ask me about the monoclonal antibodies. I think that those are, an effective and useful treatment. I understand those and I don't see the risk. Do I think that there are some negatives with it? Yes. But when you're talking about someone that may have a life-threatening disease, the benefit and the cost to me, the benefit outweighs the cost. So I'm, not unilaterally against everything. It's just a matter of really, I just feel like people are running forward and saying, this is a magic pill, and it's not. It's very complex science with some very unfortunate and possible unintended consequences. And the thing is, the vaccinologists and the scientists either knew or should have known about these. And for whatever reasons, all of that, and this is why they're censoring doctors. So here's a question I want to ask you. So if we're in the middle of this pandemic, where are all the conferences of scientists and doctors, even if they're online, even if they're on Zoom or whatever, however you want to do it? Why hasn't there been one every 2 weeks? Wouldn't you think one on therapeutics, one on vaccine design, one on this? Where has that been? One on OSHA standards, engineering controls. Nothing. This has been a top-down control by one person. And I don't know why it is. I was just alarmed because none of the policy was following the science. I knew that we had the science to overcome this last summer, and I thought by the middle of the summer it would be struck down. I did my research on hydroxychloroquine. It's very intimately connected with my field, so I understood what they were saying. I said the science of this medication is stellar. It's been, parachuted out for the third world where it was, just given away like candy. There are a few things that you need to be aware of. One is G6 phosphate dehydrogenase mutations in Africans and African Americans, but we know a lot about that. So this was an amazing medication with some of the most stellar basic science I'd ever seen. The top infectious disease expert in the world came out and said, I show that it obliterates viral replication in 6 days, and that basically it turns this around in all my patients. Now, obviously, more studies need to be done, but this is an FDA-approved drug that is safe, and it's been used for decades, for 70 years. And yet, because I'm like, they're like, well, we need to take this inoculation because this is so deadly, but we can't take an FDA-approved medication? That makes no sense. And so there's a lot more going on here. I don't really want to discuss the politics, but what you need to know is that you're not being told the truth, or you're not being told the whole story. Why that is, I can only speculate.
Let me tell everyone. Let me jump in real quick, Dr. Parks. Everybody who's watching, I'm speaking with the one and only Dr. Christina Parks. And Dr. Parks gave some stellar testimony that a lot of you saw online. I'm gonna put her name up here. And also, if you could, everybody, as you come in, hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button, share this video, because y'all know I don't know how long it's gonna be up, but I don't care. I want you all to have facts and truth and make your own decision. And hit that like and share button. That's really important, because we have to support our people that are out to represent our interests and protect the community and support the community. And you guys, I don't think Dr. Parks needs to prove that. She did a great job. And I want to show you something, Dr. Parks. You said a lot that's really made me think. And in fact, I want everybody to know Dr. Parks is one of the reasons why my wife and we don't watch the news anymore. We just watch C-SPAN. C-SPAN. I love C-SPAN because C-SPAN will let you watch the actual press conference where you can actually hear what someone said, instead of CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever, where they'll give you their spin on what they said, or they'll take it out of context. I drives us crazy. We're like, no, we just want to hear what they said, right? And so let me show you something. You brought this up, and I actually did research on this, and I want to show everybody this. This is on my Instagram. My Instagram's the Real Boyce Watkins, in case you guys want to check it out. And you mentioned this during your testimony, Dr. Parks, and I want to highlight this. This is a Carnegie Mellon study that shows that PhDs are the most vaccine hesitant group of all. That here, this big tall spike, these are the PhDs. These are the people with bachelor's and master's and professional degrees, people with a little bit of college who didn't quite finish. And then here are the people with high school diplomas or less, almost up there with the PhD. It's utterly fascinating. It almost says to me that sometimes thinking that you know everything because you're following the crowd or doing what everybody else is doing so a little bit of knowledge can be very dangerous. You either want to have no knowledge or a lot of knowledge, it seems, on things like this, where you either know what the heck is really going on or you don't do anything because you don't trust the government. But Dr. Parks, you brought that up, and I'd like to get your thoughts on that. That was really fascinating. I when you mentioned that PhDs are among the group that's the most hesitant to get the shot, I thought about myself. I thought about my sister, who's a medical doctor. I thought about other PhDs and MDs that I know who said, maybe let me think about it. And so can you kind of speak to that? What made you bring that up during your testimony?
Well, there's this social pressure that you need to be able to follow the science, right? That if you don't want this vaccine, you are anti-science, and nothing could be more further from the truth. Again, science is complex. There are always unintended consequences. And in fact, as I said, those of us who are scientists know that there are often unintended consequences. And until we're very, very certain about something, and they're also the hardest to persuade because we know what we know, right? Other people are like, well, I don't know who to believe. Should I believe my doctor? Should I believe you? Should I believe them? And so they're just kind of like, eeny, miny, mo. Okay, I'll trust them today. We know what we know. And if there's a hesitancy there, it's because we're not comfortable with that science yet. And so there are times when sometimes you wait to see what the unintended consequences are. Or maybe you just flat out say, hey, no, that is not safe, or whatever it is. But, you also are able to research. And so many PhDs will take the time to dive into the literature. In fact, they'd probably be more vaccine hesitant if some of them weren't just so busy, and maybe they don't have kids and they just haven't spent the time to do the research. Because one of the things, again, when I was in graduate school, I didn't learn most of this. I had to go pull the primary literature, and I was like, whoa, where, most of us are like, where did this come from? Why is this not being talked about? And so, but more and more moms who had vaccine injured children, and unfortunately, many of those moms are Black moms, African American moms, who, I mentioned that the MMR study that Congress finally said, hey, do the MMR study and prove that the MMR doesn't cause autism. And they did it and found that it caused over, 3.7 times the rates of autism in Black boys that got their inoculations on time versus those who got it late. What would it be if they didn't get it at all? And they showed the data. Those experiments happened in 2002. How many Black boys' brains could we have saved if we had stopped.
Hmm.
It's very, very upsetting to me.
That's
And
very
yet
upsetting to
the
me too.
media wants us to think that, oh, we really care about Black people. And, if you want to talk about institutionalized racism, well, there you go. I mean, however you want to, to me, the history of inoculation is one of testing on marginalized populations, covering up unintended consequences, and whitewashing the whole thing, especially now that there's a profit to be made. After much research, I can tell you this, and I don't believe it's a Black thing. I just believe that had it been anyone, they would have covered it up, but more so because that's a little bit more of a political issue.
Hmm. Well, it's funny. When you're talking, I'm hearing the cha-ching, big pharma.
Yeah.
My area is finance, and you follow the money. You learn a lot of things, right? Like, I mean, just this idea that we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, but I think it's we're ranked number 30 or 31 behind Costa Rica or something like that. And it just, this idea that, as you mentioned, hey, don't worry about being healthy, don't worry about taking care of your immune system, don't worry about doing anything natural, don't lean on anything that's already tried and true, just get this new shot we have or take this new pill, right? And you saw that with the opioid crisis, for example. And then now with this, it's one of those things where I would probably have a lot more faith in the healthcare system if it weren't driven by capitalism, right? And I'm a finance guy. I'm all for free enterprise. I'm all for capital bases, and Black wealth is a big deal for me. I believe that, but capitalism, the way it's practiced in the United States, is just downright destructive sometimes. It's greedy. It's built on, for example, Moderna. Moderna was making almost no money before the pandemic. Now they made, I don't know how many billions of dollars, right? We own Moderna stock, my wife and I, and we were like, oh, look at this, look at the stock price, right? Well, what's going to happen now is that Moderna is going to have to come up with a better trick to make their investors happy, right? So if the stock went from $30 to 150, the people that buy in at 150 are going to say, okay, what else you got, right? So they're not going to say, oh, well, the pandemic's over, and we realize that for the health of the public, we don't need this shot anymore. They can't do that, right? The system will spit you out. Instead, it's like, oh, we've got this new shot, we got a new booster shot, or we got a new variant, a new this and a new that. Almost like an artist coming out with a new record every year.
Yeah, except for it's on the backs of our health. And I mean, I guess I see both sides because I have a special needs daughter, and capitalism drives a market in which whatever you want, someone's willing to make. And I think without capitalism, we wouldn't have that. We wouldn't have the special needs bicycles. We wouldn't have, many things that the government just wouldn't think to make, but someone had a special needs child or whatever and was like, hey. So I see that side. What we don't want is this crony capitalism, what's integrated into our government. And at the heart of this is lack of liability, right? If we made vaccine manufacturers liable again, they would be incentivized to make a good product. And they can certainly make a much better product. And some of the products may not be that bad, but we have a vaccine schedule that crams them all in there because everybody wants to make their buck. And so, but if there were liability, then people would be able to do discovery and find out what was really going on. And so, as a Christian, I just believe that we're sinful as a creature. And that's why accountability is necessary. That's why a Judeo-Christian ethic is so important for our country, because without it, we degenerate into this kind of madness where everyone's out for this sort of selfish kind of capitalism. Of course, that's, I'm not a finance person, so that's just my 2 cents.
No, that's very accurate. And Dr. Parks, I have a couple more things I want to ask you about. And actually make that 3 quick things. First thing I want to ask is, do you have social media or something where people can follow you and support you? Because there are a lot of people here that are really praying for you because they're like, oh, she's going to need protection. This
Amen, right?
So is there a way people can follow and support anything?
Sure. So I'm on Facebook. I don't post much that's controversial on Facebook because what's the point? It'll either be taken down or I'll be taken down. And so most of my science I post on my Telegram account. So it's just Dr. Christina Parks on Telegram. Okay. And, I can send your people a link if you want to put it on your webpage somewhere. And I like the way that that channel works so that you can see all the science. I also have a lot of resources like America's Frontline Doctors, like, those videos of Fauci, and because sometimes those are hard to find. Once you find something in this environment of censorship, it's like, where did that go? You do a search, you can't find it. So, so I have a lot of the primary scientific literature. A lot of times I drop it there so I can go back and look at that paper without downloading all of them. But that's my major social media presence right now. We'll see, that may change in the future. We'll see what happens with that. What was the other part of your question?
I think you should get an Instagram page.
I've never been on Instagram. Someone was saying they wanted to do some Instagram stuff with me, and they were talking about it. I had no idea. I sit down and read scientific papers at night. So,
well, you know what?
I know about Instagram.
Well, let me tell you, sister, if you need help setting up your Instagram, just let me know. We're friends now. I'm glad to help. Because my wife was the same way. She was in her office, just buried away, like a lot of us are. We get trained in our doctors. We're trained to do a couple of things really well,
right?
And then you're banging away. I was on the faculty of Syracuse University for about 12 years, and I was sitting in my office, 14 hours a day, writing these research papers that maybe 10 people could read,
right?
And then the internet kind of exploded. And I was like, oh, I can use the world. The world can be my classroom, right? Instead of talking to 30 kids in the class, I can talk to my people. I can talk about what I want, and it's been really awesome. So I encourage you. I'm just going to publicly encourage you to set up an Instagram. And when you do, I will personally share your content and drive all my people to go check you out, because I think what you're doing is fascinating. And I wonder,
now, won't they censor me on Instagram?
Well, that I can give you some pointers on how to kind of deal with that, because I post things like I posted your video. I post, I try to post facts, right? And and the thing is, it's an integrity thing. If a fact is going to get me banned, then so be it, right? And I'm still out here, but I can't say that they're not watching, right? So let me ask you this: speaking of that, how are things for you professionally? I mean, you're taking on a lot of big enemies here that, big pharma. You got the Fauci crew and the CDC, and it's almost like you're saying that they're misleading the public. I mean, how's that been for you?
Not almost. I'll just go ahead and say it. They're misleading the public. Really? I'll be very clear about that. If God is for you, who can be against you? I feel that I've been raised up for such a time as this. And there's some things when it's not gray whether they're being misled. What reasons, I'm not going to speculate, but the truth is the truth. And so if you are a person who leads with integrity, you just walk forward and trust your Lord and Savior that He has a plan for this, whether it's for my good and the good of everyone else, or just the good of the world. We'll see. But that said, I have been surrounded by, there are so many warriors, Andrew Wakefield, who I probably shouldn't say his name, who they destroyed for telling the truth that these kids with autism had huge gut problems and that their parents reported that it was related to the MMR. He had a press conference. He would have been fine if he'd done the science in his closet and not said anything, but he held a press conference and they destroyed him. And he said, you know what? My life is great. If you see these children's lives, these families' lives that have been destroyed, then it makes you realize that nothing that you are going through is anything in comparison, And so I have some friends, their children got one, it was probably contaminated, jab, just one. They were doing a slow schedule. They had triplets. All three of them regressed into autism within 24 hours. Two are severely autistic and one is moderately. And seeing the pain and the struggle that they go through every day. Their children are 14 now. It's absolutely heartbreaking. My daughter has special needs. She's not injured by a jab. It was unrelated. But I know what that journey looks like. And I'm not going to be silent and allow people to suffer. So when you see what these moms go through, and these moms, like, I have such high esteem for them. If you want to ever get me going, start denigrating one of these moms who has basically given herself a PhD by studying all of this science. I mean, these women know the science, and they will read that paper 30 times if they have to understand it. Where someone else is like, I can't get this. They're like, it's their baby. It's that important. And so they've learned this science. And so when people denigrate them, I'm like, no, I'm not having it. They're like, you're not a doctor. I'm like, well, I am. um, and so when I look at their journeys and what they've had to deal with, that's what gives me strength, because I'm not going to watch people be destroyed and say nothing.
Wow. Well, you know what? We need more people like you, and you are the perfect example of not just a prayer warrior, but the kind of scholar that we need, right? The scholar that is going to say, I spent all these years learning all this stuff, and I'm going to apply it to support my people. And that's been my journey, and I just don't see it so much. I see a lot of scholars who are afraid, well, if I say this, it'll hurt my career and stuff like that. It's like, well, okay, your career is important, but there are some things more important than your career. Oh, please go ahead.
And what did you get into your career to do? Like, most of us got into our careers very idealistic to help and save the world. If you're in it and you're not doing that, what was the point? I talked to Dr. Simone Gold, and I talked to some of these other people who either have lost everything or are losing everything by the world standards. But there's times in life when there's a paradigm shift in history, and this may be one of them, where the old model is going to crumble and fall away. And obviously, a lot of people are going to be hurt as that happens. But when they rebuild new, it's the people who had that vision. I think of when you have a new country, when a new government comes in, and I'm thinking more of in a positive sense than in a negative sense. But the new people who come in, as they come in, they sort of pull each other up, and they start something new. And so I think that that's what can happen. And so I'm excited for the future. I didn't really have any career to destroy. I teach at a homeschool co-op. I'm a homeschool mom, and I did teach high school for a while. But, I told my son, I'm the same person now as I was when I was battling to get him to do his homework. That was the most important journey of my life, is making sure that my children, know the Lord, know what's true, and have a worldview and can evaluate different worldviews. And so I think we put so much on how other people see us or how other people value us. And I said, it's really how you value yourself. I was no less worthy whether I get 1 view or 1 million views.
Yes, I love it. Everybody, just tell this sister how much you love her. I know y'all saying it in the chat, but I want y'all to consciously just say, we love you, Christina. Because we're very intentional here. Just so you know, we put our community first. We believe our children, it's the B1 philosophy. We believe B1 children are going to lead the world in education, economics, and family development, things like that. Also, we believe in the idea of being one to be successful. That means coming together, supporting each other, having each other's back, etc. That's why I specifically asked you, whatever you're doing, and I just will say this publicly, whatever you're doing or will do in the future, whatever we can do to support that, we will support that, because we believe that we as a community have to decide who our leaders are going to be, or who our own heroes are going to be, or who are, instead of, looking at some guy on TV because he made a song, how about those people in the community that are really holding it down for our children, holding it down for the people that we care about. And so people like Dr. Claude Anderson and others are highly respected in that regard. And I want to say thank you. And I want to mention one last thing, and then I'm going to let you get back to your day, because I can imagine you're super busy. You said something at the end that I thought was really awesome. You talked about the economic implications of this idea of saying, that we're going to take whatever, it's whatever, 50 million, 80 million, however many millions of people that refuse to get this jab, and we're going to just lock them out of the economic system, right? And you talk about African Americans, you're talking about a much higher number. I did a survey on my Twitter. We have about 126,000 people on my Twitter page. About 80% of them said that they have not gotten the shot,
wow.
Right?
That's good news.
right. It's a big number, right? And so you're talking about a big chunk of people that are going to be just isolated if they pass these laws saying that you're required to get these shots in order to get a job. And a lot of people have real concerns about, like, what are the long-term effects here? Like, what's going to, you're just reading so many things. Like, I think I saw something the other day where they said something about blood possibilities that may develop 2 or 3 years down the road, and just all kinds of stuff. Can you speak on that? Because what I really liked, and this is actually what led me to reach out. I don't reach out to a lot of people like this. I wanted to reach out to you to have you on. I'm glad you accepted our invitation, because you didn't just speak as a scientist, you spoke as a Black woman. And I thought that was extremely important. Can you speak to that in terms of, what led you to not just talk about the economic exclusion, but you brought up Tuskegee, you brought up a lot of things that reflect our people. Can you talk about that a little bit, if you mind?
Well, and that's one of the reasons I reached out to you. Quite honestly, I spent much of my life living in majority communities, but that doesn't mean that I haven't thought very deeply about the problem facing the African American problem in America. And I worked in the Ypsilanti schools and in the Ann Arbor schools, looking at racial disparities and trying to figure out what's going on and how can I help. That my heart has always been there. I've been president of Black Student Association, president of Multicultural Association. So this has been something that has been a part of who I am. And, I had someone, I'm sure you've gotten sort of the patronizing, oh, these poor Black people, we have to help you. And I shot back with, we have our own doctors, we have our own judges, stop pitying us. Yes. And, because that's not how I was raised, and it's not how I raised my son. You don't do what you need to do, I will kick you in the butt.
There you go.
And, that is, it's a tough love. And it's that tough love that we have to have for our communities. So when you love someone, you don't pander to them, you don't enable them, you tell them the truth, and you set a higher vision and a higher expectation. And so, I set high expectations in my own household and for my own community. And so because of that, before I can even set the expectation high, people have to know the truth. And so it's been very, very difficult because I don't really live right in the Black community, and because there's a certain amount of brainwashing that's going on with the media in all areas, but in that specifically, that people just dismiss you because it's so far out, is what they feel like. This is so far out, it can't be true, or I'm not ready to deal with it. But I think when we come together as a whole, a Black community like you've developed here, it really provides a space for people to really thoughtfully engage and to gain that information in a respectful way. It's not just sort of a one-off. You can kind of start forming a coherent community and a coherent worldview and many of those things that I think is very, very powerful. And so I'm excited to be a part of that.
Tell me about your parents, because people like you, usually the apple is close to the tree. What did your parents do with you that made you into the person you are today?
Boy, it's funny because, many African Americans identify as Democrats, and certainly our family was, and I was growing up and through school. I'm now a little bit more conservative, a lot more conservative. But we had conservative values, and family was a value. My family, my dad's family, my mom is European and my dad is African American. My dad's family came from Kingsville, Texas, from the King's Ranch. There's some very rough circumstances. It should be like an epic miniseries, honestly. And my great grandmother was Apache Indian. So they have a little bit of backbone coming in there, and some of those stories are kind of exciting. And so there was no nonsense. There were very high expectations. There were very high expectations that you would be educated. And I really felt that burden of education. In my family, that my father, went to college. His mother, basically worked in a sweatshop and gave herself back problems, which she eventually died of with a bad surgery, and then never really recovered from the surgery very well in terms of her health. But her core convictions and her stubbornness that her kids were going to get an education, the pretzels that family wrapped themselves in to get those kids a decent education is just stunning and inspiring. And so I was inspired by that. I knew that my success, that everything that I had was built by these people, by my parents and my grandparents that went before me and their sacrifices, and that it was a gift that if I squandered, I just feel like it would just be a travesty. And so I really felt a responsibility. Not that anyone ever said anything like you have to do this, you need to do that. That was never the message. The message was, we value education. In my household, it's like food or education. Yeah, we'll buy the book. My son was like, Mom, this Herodotus book. He was studying Herodotus, which is like a Greek historian, right? And he's like, do you think we could get the hardbound and with the maps? And I'm like, I didn't say anything in 3 days. It was shipped from Amazon, right? Like, so we didn't really need it. We can eat ramen noodles for a week or whatever, but it wasn't that bad. But I'm just saying, and I got that from my parents because when I would hear them, we'd move, and the first thing they would talk about was how's the school district? What's what benefits does that have our children? So I have a very, very high value on education, and my whole family did. And so out of all my extended family, my great grandmother had like 9 or 11 siblings, and almost our whole family is middle class when we have family reunions. And so many of those core families were married, they stayed married, and they valued education. And so those are 2 core values that were really passed down in my family that I think stuck and enabled people to be successful.
Yes. You know what, Dr. Parks? I think you and I have the same parents. We really do. I mean, everything about family and accountability, like stop sitting around making excuses. My dad was in the Vietnam War. Shout out to all the veterans. There's a lot of veterans that follow the platform, I guess, because they also understand, you don't just cry about the mission, you go and you get it done. Right. And he came back from Vietnam, like a lot of black men, with a heroin issue. Right. Because a lot of them, young guys, they got into that. And I asked him, I said, so heroin, there are a lot of people that they get trapped by heroin. They can't get out of that web. How did you do that? And he said, I just quit. I knew that
made the decision.
Yeah. Same thing. Or like when I ask him, I say, so you've been married to my mom for 47 years. That's amazing that, people can't do that anymore. What was your secret to staying married for 47 years? He says, we didn't get a divorce.
Yeah, we just decided. And that was very much my father. We can be very critical of our parents sometimes too. They're not perfect people. But my brother actually had Down syndrome. And so my dad going up the corporate ladder while having 5 kids, one with, a disability, and married to a white woman, is no joke. Wow. And to stick to it. And so as you grow older, instead of criticizing, you're like, wow, that took a lot of strength. That took a lot of perseverance. That took a lot of character. And when you see that, and you see what it built, and that's what families are about. If you do not have a stable family, you can't build anything because you're just always in, you're always having some drama or whatever it is. And so that allowed all of us to be successful. It allowed something to be built, and it was just a core cornerstone.
Wow, I'm sitting over here smiling because everybody in the chat that watches our platform, they know that this is the stuff that we're talking about every week. We have to come together as people, as a community. Family is critical. I think that's one of the reasons why they work so hard to destroy our families, is because they know that if you don't have family, you can't build anything. You can't build wealth, can't build anything.
I think that's the reason that, in my experience, I feel that people are, I'm not sure if the word is intimidated. The black man is a threat. He's perceived as a threat. And I've wondered why that is. As a black woman, I never felt like I was really perceived as a threat. But I could see it with black men. A strong black man leading his family and his community is a threat to the status quo because we've been used and marginalized. And if you have a strong black man leading his family and community, he's not going to allow that marginalization. They talk about Trump, and this is not to be political, but that there's so many black people that, especially black males, that like Trump. Trump was the alpha male. Black men value that alpha male. It's a very traditional role. It's a role to provide and protect. It's a very strong role. It's not a subservient role like we see sort of the beta males that are trying to please. That's not the black men I've met and I know. They are alpha males, and their job is to provide and protect and lay down the law.
Yes. Yes.
And so, that's why I think that many like him, because he's perceived in that way. And I won't get into any of the other politics surrounding that. But and that's why I think the black man is a threat, because when you see someone who's strong and leading that community, and it's the same reason Christians are a threat, because they can't be easily manipulated and dissuaded to your point of view or whatever scam you're running. And so they have to be taken out because they're not going to give. And that's why we see the Martin Luther King Jr.'s and the Rosa Parks and the people who said, no, I'm standing here. And that's where we're at now. But we need to wake up the black community to stand with us. And I'm seeing more and more, there's the women are always strong, but more and more, I think black men have been a target and they've been marginalized, and more saying, wait, I'm done. Or at least they weren't visible, standing up on these alternate social media platforms to be visible. And I think that is so powerful, because when men lead, just anything can happen.
Wow. I love it. Oh, this has been so much fun. And I'll tell you, everybody that's watching, in case you don't know, Dr. Christina Parks, go look her up, go Google her. And you said on Telegram, they can just.
I'm on Telegram. It's an alternate. It's not censored. I had to find one where I could post what I needed to post.
You know what? I might get me a Telegram account too. So yeah, so everybody go check out her Telegram account. And also, if she does do Instagram or anything else you do, you and I are friends now. In case you don't know, we're like, but you got play cousins.
Amen.
So this is my play cousin Christina. Even though she went to Michigan and I went to Ohio State.
Where are you living now? Any place I can come for vacation? Because Michigan's cold in the wintertime.
There you go. Well, we live in Illinois, and yeah. And
what part of Illinois?
Shorewood, which is right near Joliet. And also we're having I'll tell you more about it, but we're having a convention in Orlando at the end of October, the All Black National Convention. I'll send you information, and I'm publicly extending an invitation to you because I so appreciate everything you've done. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and I hope everybody in the chat will let Dr. Christina know how much we appreciate everything she's doing, because these are the people that we need to know about in the community. So everybody hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button on your way out. Also, don't forget that September 1st is Dr. Claude Anderson's birthday. So let's make sure that we mark that on our calendar. Dr. Claude Anderson wrote a book called Powernomics, Dr. Christina. So you should go take a look. He's of your ilk in the sense that he would have agreed with everything you said here. And he's also really big on Black empowerment, and everybody loves him. And there's so much to talk about, but I'm not going to get started because I'll start going on streams of consciousness, which I'll be talking all day. So everybody, please hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button. We will see you soon. And thank you once again, Dr. Parks. And you all have a wonderful day. Remember, make your own decision. Take care of your family. Take care of your immune system. Stay healthy. Stay smart. Stay intelligent. And most importantly, please continue to be as Black as you can be, because that's what's going to make you great. So God bless you. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.